A few weeks ago, while perusing the clearance area of a home improvement store, I found something that I really haven't used in a project yet. Lucky bamboo. These look pretty sorry, but if we take a closer look, there are several stalks that can be salvaged. I should mention that although this is called bamboo and really does look like it, it's actually not. It's a type of Dracaena. Regardless, for the purposes of this video, I'll call it bamboo. Anyway, as I considered what could be done with them, I had a few ideas. However, I kept going back to those little bamboo fountains that fill up with water and dump once full. Luckily, and no pun intended, I had these bamboo stakes on hand, which will be perfect for this project. The scale of these goes well with the plants and should make for a cool fountain. That said, they're somewhat brittle, so they're not the easiest material to work with. I discovered this while making a prototype. It's leaking, looks kind of sloppy, and doesn't have all of the components. But I was simply trying to see if it was even possible to make something like this with the materials that I have. And in theory, I should be able to do so. The reason I mention any of this is because I'm going to have to cut this down to the appropriate lengths. As I do this, I'll have to account for the thickness of the stakes and choose sections accordingly. I also want to include as many nodes as possible to really get that bamboo look across. Anyway, while cutting these, it really helps to tape along the areas where I make the cuts to reduce frayed edges. Now then, let's get to work. I cut all these pieces out on my table saw to save some time. Sure, I could have done them all by hand, but that would have taken forever. I'll have to make a few additional cuts later on, but here's what I have for now. This set is for the primary fountain apparatus, and these are for the part that fills with water. Before I can connect these all together, there's a little bit more that I need to do. This piece will sit on top. To make a better fit, I sanded down the ends of the posts with a rotary sander to create a concave surface. I drilled a few holes on the piece that will lay horizontally on these as well. As I did, I began with small bits and worked up to larger ones. Even so, they did fray a little bit, so I went back with a file. I created these holes for the spout, which will go here. I can't attach it yet though. The pieces aren't hollow, so I had to drill through any segments that require water to pass through. Additionally, I had to remove a section of bamboo between these two holes. I made a few slits and pried it off. This will make it much easier to install a rigid airline tube. I passed a torch over this to manipulate it in two spots. This allowed it to fit perfectly between the holes. I applied some super glue and concealed this with the bamboo I just removed. Back to the spout. I applied glue and slid it onto the tube. I did the same for the right post. I also put a dab on the top of the other and secured it accordingly. Once the glue was dry, I applied silicone through the side to fill in the gaps. This will ensure everything is watertight. And here we are the next day. We'll take a closer look to see how this is actually going to work, and then we'll go on to make the rest of the build. The way this will work is that a pump's going to send water up through this post here, it will go left and out the spout, and the cycle will continue. Now if you recall, I put that airline tube right in this section here. It goes from about this area of the spout over and down to about right here in the post, and then the rest of this length here is all just bare bamboo. The water will be able to pass through there just fine, but I'll also secure an airline here in the bottom, and that's what I'll actually connect the pump to. I applied glue to the airline and locked it into the bamboo. Then I cut out a piece of expanded PVC board. I drilled a hole in this and secured it onto the bottom of the primary structure with more glue. After all of that, I removed the excess airline. Time to address the other structure. I marked for the sides on a piece of expanded PVC board and secured them with glue. Then I drilled holes in the sides of the posts to accommodate the moving parts. I use a bamboo skewer for that portion of it. I put some glue in the inside of the middle piece and connected everything with the skewer. Once it dried, I cut off the excess. I also thought it would look cool if I wrapped hemp cord around the various posts. I think it was a nice addition. Lastly, I glued a stone to the opposite end of the moving piece. Now I gotta say, selecting the stone was quite the process. I didn't film any of this, but I had to ensure that it would function properly as a counterweight until it's full of water. Once full, it tips over, spills out, and everything returns to the previous position. Now then, to get the water flowing for real, I need to hook up this pump. I have a few components that will go with it, starting with an airline tube that I attached to the bottom of the fountain. I'll also utilize these brick fragments. I secured each structure to its own brick with a zip tie. With those secure, I can move them into this enclosure. I actually built this almost 3 years ago for the pond-themed riparium, so it's cool to be using it once more. Of course, it's custom built, but I've talked about that in plenty of other videos before, so I'm not going to talk about that here. Anyway, I placed the bricks in a rough configuration. From there, I hooked up the pump along with an inline valve to adjust the flow. Then I filled it up with water to do a test run. I had to adjust the placement a little bit, as well as the frequency of drops. This is the moment I've been patiently waiting to see though, so let's watch it together. I was so excited to see this work properly because it was something that took a while to engineer. That said, you'll notice that it's not really working as it was in those previous clips, and I think that's because this bamboo section here has soaked up some water, so it's heavier over here than it was before, but that should be an easy fix. I'll do that later on, but in the meantime, I'm going to get this thing scaped. Before that, I need to address the pump. I want it to be separate from everything else so it doesn't intake debris. I cut out a few pieces of PVC board and made holes in them. Then I secured some window screen over these to create a permeable barrier. I attached everything together and put a piece on the bottom to create a box. Additionally, I drilled a hole in the side for the pump. That meant I was able to install everything. This design allows me to access and service the pump while being separate from the substrates. Polyester fluff allowed me to create further separation. After that, I collected some river stones that I used to build up the land area. As I built it up, I added more fluff. Time for the substrate, starting with pebbles in the background. I used these to build up some height. I added some more fluff, which I'll use to hold back aqua soil. At this point it was looking pretty good, but I still have to fix that moving part. I simply glued 2 small pebbles onto the stone, and that solved the issue. That meant I could finally add the plants. I cleaned them off and selected the good portions. I added them throughout to create a mini bamboo forest. As you'd probably expect, I'll include moss as well using cargo fabric. This will wick water up onto the land area. I placed one end into the water and the rest up on the land like this. As for the moss, I'll include a few varieties throughout the scape. With a nice ground covering, I embellished the scape with small stones. I also dressed the pump vault with a large stone. From there I covered the rest of the land and the bottom of the water feature with sand. To finish it off, I added some duckweed to the water feature and a few segments of oak leaf creeping fig. From the fountain structure to the repurposed clearance lucky bamboo and the water feature, I couldn't be happier with how everything turned out. I think it's a really fun piece with great movement to it, don't you? My favorite part is hands down the Shishi-Odoshi Fountain. It's definitely a unique feature that, although tedious to build, is a great addition to the animal room. I could go on, but I think the piece speaks for itself, so I think I'll end it there. I thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all learned something new and enjoyed the project as well. Let me know what you think about the results down in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up to help support the channel and subscribe for more. Until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.